What is the worst case of attention seeking you've ever seen? It was a couple of years ago, but there was this whole news story about these parents who had a weather balloon in their backyard, and supposedly one of their kids had gotten into the balloon and set it off. The parents were all worried because their kid was supposedly in the balloon. Well, once the balloon eventually landed, there was no kid, and it turns out that the kid was hiding in their basement the whole time. It was later figured out that it was all a hoax, and that the parents did it to get attention. I have an old childhood friend who is constantly either engaged to a new guy or claims to be pregnant. She once claimed to have had a miscarriage, and then less than 3 months later was 4 months pregnant. None of her supposed boyfriends ever make an appearance with her, or have an online persona. On top of such, she's the type that will post the status of things are awful, but I won't say why, so don't bother to message me all the time. I honestly think she needs therapy, but that's very thin ice to tread on. My sister. She has always had a screw loose, just very loopy and immature for her age. She was like 16 before she crossed the street by herself, and my parents just enabled her. But when she went off to college, everything got a lot worse. She came up with this lie that she has lived her life by, that I, her brother, was some sort of abusive asshole to her entire life, and she told everyone that, if God is good, I'm going to hell. A couple months later she came home for Thanksgiving, and she blatantly refused to be in the same room as me, and let's say I would walk into the kitchen while she was making something with mom or my grandmother, she would literally scream and duck behind the counter. Then at dinner, when I sat down at the table with the whole family, she screamed that she wouldn't sit at the same table as me, and was just being a huge attention seeker. It was absolutely ridiculous. Everyone knew that she wanted attention, and she has driven away several roommates who told the rat that she's crazy because of her tendencies. My sister-in-law's cousin is hot. Everyone agrees. There's no denying it. When she walks into a room, all eyes turn to her. She's always got guys fawning all over her. She has plenty of attention, deserved or not, at all fucking times. When my brother got married, this girl, my sister-in-law's cousin, decided to wear a huge, frilly white dress with a hat/veil. She kept barging into places moments before my SIL, excusing herself for causing confusion. I wanted to punch her face. I wasn't the one getting married, I'm a guy, and I still wanted to fucking punch this woman's face. My dad's second wife paid someone to write a biography about her mundane life in which she tried to drag me, my siblings and my mom through the dirt. Then she started handing out copies to as many people as she could. She also runs to my dad to cry about my sister regularly, because my sister calls her out on her shit. She's constantly negative about people, to hide her own insecurities. She generally can't stand not being the center of attention, and she will steer any conversation to be about her or her children. Munchausen syndrome by proxy is probably the most terrifying type of attention seeking you're going to find out there. A behavior pattern in which a caregiver fabricates, exaggerates, or induces mental or physical health problems in those who are in their care, usually to gain attention or sympathy from others. One with deception at its core, this behavior is an elusive, potentially lethal, and frequently misunderstood form of child abuse. 2. Or medical neglect. 3. That has been difficult to define, detect, and confirm. Apostrophe. During a hot hour summer, I was detasseling corn to keep it from pollinating, and one of the girls in my crew pretended to be stung by a bee and said she was extremely allergic. She started spazzing out like crazy, so we called 911 and a helicopter ended up flying to the field to take her to the hospital. After they brought her in, it turns out this fucking bitch was faking it. Needless to say, she got fired, and I think she got some kind of fine. I went to high school, 250 students total, with this kid who was a bit of a loner and had a reputation for being a pathological liar. In college, my friends and I began to notice these beautiful girls writing to him on his Facebook wall. At first, it struck us as odd, but we left it alone. As weeks passed, our news feeds continued to be flooded with new girls we had never heard of flirting with him, so we started to get curious. Some of us have known this kid our entire lives, and we could count the number of times he spoke to girls on one hand. We later discovered that he had created 30 to 40 fake Facebook profiles with completely fabricated backstories and stole pictures of real women he found on the internet. He would carry out conversations with himself by posting from all the fake female accounts multiple times a day on his wall about fake parties, hangouts, etc. and respond from his own account. After this happened, he closed his Facebook account. We later found out he had become a gambling addict and spent time in a mental institution. Eventually, he moved to another city and got a job. He refriended all of his HS classmates, including me, and from what I see, he seems pretty happy. It took him a while, but I'm glad things worked out for him in the end. This was me. My cousin was visiting from Korea. I was 8, he was 6. We were sitting around my mother on the floor watching her sew something. She couldn't find a piece of string she had pre-cut. She asked us to look around ourselves for the string. My cousin was sitting on it. He handed it to her and said, "It may be smelly, I farted on it." My mom laughed and said, "Haha, you're so funny." I got jealous. So I forced her farts out, but shat my pants instead. My mother didn't laugh. I discovered this yesterday, my old best friend using the fact that I got bullied and have social anxiety by saying it all happened to her, and she tweeted her favorite celebrities my story in order to get a reply from them when none of it happened to her. Update: 3 days later, I confronted her about it and she's ignoring me and has deleted all photos of me and her off both Facebook and Twitter. LMAO. This was in my early 20s. I would work with the young coworkers in the most laborious part of the company. Women were also there. We would all hang out after work. Good group of friends, except for one girl. She kinda interrupted conversations she wasn't involved in. I knew she was self-centered, but I didn't care until the day she got fired. One of the girls in the group got engaged and everyone was happy for her. Retelling and rehearing the way he proposed over and over, since it was quite adorable. She had a face of jealousy. Suddenly we don't see her. Then one break we check our phones and she said that she's going to kill herself. We show our manager. She panics and sends me to check on her, track her down. I find her in her house eating chips watching TV. She was fired for abandoning the job. Knew a dude who was a pathological liar. Some highlights included: stolen valor. Claimed he was the only survivor from his Alpha/Bravo/whatever special forces squad where he was the squad leader. Made up elaborate stories about his training, missions, you name it. Even got pissed off and accused legitimate soldiers of stolen valor. He even had some real vets convinced. Of course, whenever he was offered a job pertaining to his vet status, asked about going to the VAP, or was put in a situation where his military papers were required, he had a convenient inconvenience come up. All of his teammates died, and in all of his moves he lost any documentation backing up his claims. Hypochondria. He did have one legitimate painful disease, but he chose to go all out by adding in a history of seizures, migraines, and a cervical fusion from a failed halo jump from one of his missions, see above. He'd be in the shower for an hour, or doubling over in pain, rocking back and forth. Casually mentioning, "I had a seizure the other night, but you were asleep. I didn't tell you, because I didn't want to scare you." Turns out he did hurt his neck a long time ago, but it was due to an obese patient falling on him when he was an EMT. Munchausen syndrome. He couldn't go 1 week without getting a new injury, ranging from some scrapes, or a large gash on his arm, or showing up to my dad's cut and bloodied. Superficial to the point where he wouldn't bleed out, but enough to garner attention, sympathy/pity, and have us take him to the hospital. A lot of this happened when nobody else was around, so I suspect he was doing it to himself, especially considering his family told me that they've seen him break a glass bottle over his own head and piss himself to fake having a seizure. Playing the sympathy card from all angles. Would tell one person he didn't want to be a full-time father, while telling another kid-loving person he couldn't imagine anything less than having full-time custody. Telling his girlfriend that he hadn't been happier in years and loved even just staying in with her, while complaining to buddies that she was clean, boring, and lamented that they didn't go out to party every day. Tried to get everyone to be on his side because his crazy junkie wife just left him for some junkie ex-BF, when in reality he too was also a junkie who was the one who got the crazy wife hooked on drugs. You know how young children, usually preschoolers, will tend to be the mother hen of a group of other children and constantly overcorrect and nag at them in order to feel bigger and more important? It's usually some kind of developmental thing I see happen often, usually in 3 to 4-year-old girls with little siblings. I have a nearly 30-year-old cousin who never stopped doing this, and it is like nails on the chalkboard of my mind. If you paraphrase something that happened on the news, she'll overhear and shrill actually, they said. Or if you're telling a story about something that happened, she'll correct your grammar, even if nothing is wrong with it. She always has to have the last word in every single conversation, complete with interrupting you while you are speaking. She also tries to pick fights in social situations like a preteen girl, repeating something awkward you may have said earlier super loudly on accident in front of others, complete with a smirk/fake shocked expression. It's just awful, and does this to every woman she encounters. My friend's wife died unexpectedly. His mother immediately began posting photos on Facebook of him having clearly cried himself to sleep, tissue strewn on the pillow, face streaked with tears. Captioned them with shit like "so sad," missing with the "I got you baby boy" pictures of the pets and captions about how sad they were too. Photos of her posing at her dead daughter-in-law's grave, etc. She eventually began posting several times a day thanking God for giving her the opportunity to help her son raise her grandkids. I'm surprised she didn't lick the tears from his eyes. It was sick. Literal millionaire celebrities who feel bad that, because they didn't get nominated for a meaningless trophy, they feel that their movies that grossed millions of dollars, were seen by millions of people, and got great reviews are still not properly recognized. Do they deserve Oscar nominations? Probably, but bitching about their lack thereof doesn't make you look like some progressive savior. It makes you look like a Winnie bitch. Will and Jada Smith. The family vlogger channel who had a viral video where the husband finds out the wife's pregnant by sticking a pregnancy test in a toilet she had used. I remember in one of their videos they tried to use their viral video to get into a sold out Lego event or something like that. Eventually a bunch of doctors came out saying it's almost impossible to get a conclusive positive pregnancy test from a sample diluted by toilet water. They then claimed to have had a miscarriage and had a whole bunch of shit come out after that. The husband was outed by the Ashley Madison scandal and got into a fight with another YouTuber at a convention about some tweets he favorited. When my boyfriend at the time died suddenly, my supposed best friend told his father that they had been in love and wanted to get married. She also told him and all our friends that she miscarried his baby. She showed up to his wake with electric blue hair, a club dress and high heels, wearing his sweater. I was confused and expressed my disappointment about wanting the sweater. I later found out that she had gotten the sweater by telling his father all that stuff. I was too shy to say anything, but it hurt so bad to lose him and my best friend at the same time. Looking back, she was always a huge attention whore. Every time I ever liked a guy, she would pursue him. After that whole incident, she showed up at a party at my house and fucked 2 random dudes. One of them was in a room with no door and the other was on a couch in our garage/smoke room. She was awful.